Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. What can we talk about? Well, actually, there's something from the last video that I just made a little while ago, and I mentioned in there that Mike, our visitor who is with us at the moment, I mentioned that he had brought me a book, and it's kind of a special book. It's a book called Out of the Depths, and it refers to a history of coal mining, and the history is mainly not just a general history, but it's from Colorado, and the Colorado Labor Historical Committee actually helped to put this book together. The Denver, I'm reading from the front of the book now. It says, sponsored by the Colorado Labor Historical Committee of the Denver Trades and Labor Assembly. Now, this is about, it's the story of a particular man actually, and the man is, and there's a photograph here, it is John R. Lawson, and I was thinking in the last video that it was Winslow. I hadn't heard of this before, but it's about a particularly horrendous strike that happened in 1913, I believe it was. A lot of people lost their lives in that, and it was in the birthing days of trade unions, and trade unions were not welcome, and as I said in my last video, that they went through a different different incarnations, what I think of as incarnations, different lives. When they first came, men gave their lives for the formation and the support of unions, because they were being treated so disgracefully. And right about that time, it just came to me as I'm now talking, but there was even a song about it which you might know. I've forgotten who did this, but somebody did remind me the last time that I attempted to sing it. But it was, you load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company stores. If you see me coming, better step aside. A lot of men did, and a lot of men died. One fist of iron and other of steel. If the left one don't get you, then the right one will. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company stores. And that was from a time when workers, not just, this was field workers as well, not just coal miners, but they worked in these, they lived in these cities, which were kind of boarding houses, and they lived in actually pretty rough conditions, and they earned their living, they earned their bread from the owners of the mines, and they spent at the company stores, which is what the song is about. I owe my soul to the company stores. So as soon as they made the money, the company that owned them, and they did own them, were able to take the money back off them, and they had little to be left. So they were owned by the company stores. And one of the great books I just asked a friend who I'm hoping he was able to, it was very short notice that I asked him if he would bring me a book. And the book was The Grapes of Wrath, or as you would say in America, The Grapes of Wrath. But the British say The Grapes of Wrath. And The Grapes of Wrath was about the great migration from, I think, the Midwest along Route 66. And they were farmers, and they were simple farming folks. And if you saw the Beverly Hillbillies, you'll see that they migrated to Hollywood. They migrated to California. And if you watch that movie, in many ways that was factual in the way that it was done. Beverly Hillbillies got an old car, chopped the back off it, made it into a pickup truck, and put a huge wooden pickup bed onto the back of the truck, what was then a truck, and then they hit Route 66, and many families did that trip, and some of them are buried along Route 66 because some of them didn't make it. Some of the older folk in the family, the grandmas and the grandpas, they didn't make it, and back then they were buried alongside the road. And John Steinbeck wrote The Grapes of Wrath, and if The Grapes of Wrath don't bring you to tears, you have no heart, is all I can say. The most emotional, most impassioned account of what happens when owners are able to own people as if they are possessions. And so I'm hoping that I will get that book, The Grapes of Wrath, from our friend John, who is coming to stay with us tomorrow. So we're back to why this book was of any real interest to me. As I say, it was about one of the worst in a way mining disasters, above ground mining disasters in the history of coal mining, because it was where the owners of the mines were able to manipulate what was happening in the law. There was one particular sheriff that I'm reading about now who was a law unto himself. Gosh, that's never happened before, has it? And he killed people. And the owners of some of these mines also killed people and were never held accountable. And the man who was instrumental in, he was a labor leader, and he was instrumental in this whole thing. He was a key figure. He became a key figure. He was actually shot with a shotgun by one of the owners, and spent some time in hospital, incapacitated. So here's the book. I'd like to show you the book itself. The book is Out of the Depths, and this is an old book. Just to give you an idea, I knew the book was upstairs, so I went upstairs, and there's no lights in our bedroom, and for once Beth hadn't taken a flashlight, which she usually leaves by the pillow so she's not completely in the dark, but she didn't do that today, and so I had to go in there and grope about among all of the books that are by my bedside. I tend to have a reading library by the bedside, and the way that I found this book was I found it's a hardcover, and I just went, yep, that's the book. It smells old, and here's why I think it's special. It actually says on the cover, it says, "Yours truly, John R. Lawson," and it's dated 6/11/42. That makes it kind of special, and that is one there that is, it's a it's a milestone in the creation of the United States as we know it, because that's where mere ownership, mere wealth did not allow people to own men and women and families, but they did back then. In John Steinbeck's book, East of Eden, The Grapes of Wrath. East of Eden is another favourite of mine. But in The Grapes of Wrath, they actually go, and they were enticed to go to west, to the fields of California, where they had been led to believe that you could walk along the street and there'd be oranges glowing. You could just pick an orange off a tree on the side of the road. They were given this wonderful view of what life was going to be like, that they were crying out for labour. They weren't crying out for labour. The labour were crying out, but not for the same reason. And so in The Grapes of Wrath, the family that go, they are the Joad family, Joad. And the Joad family, at one point, they live on a farm, and they live in what were old disused railway wagons, you know, the industrial wagons that have more than one infamous place in history. They actually took thousands of Jewish families to the camps to be murdered, and they took them in those same wagons. So more than one touching association with those things. This is it's important to know these things. It's important to know that things have not been won easily. When people, patriots of America, when they talk about freedom was not given, it was won, and it was hard won. Usually we think about the Second World War, and we think about wars along the way, and the wars are usually about bullets and soldiers fighting for that freedom. But there were many other places, many other situations where ordinary people, not trained soldiers, ordinary people like the Joad family in The Grapes of Wrath, and Tom, in that becomes a labor, like a rebel, because he opposed the way that people were being treated. They were being treated like animals. In a lot of ways, people are still saying that immigrant workers in America are being treated in the same way. And I know, I've seen this for myself. I've seen people working in the fields when I was in California, and I've seen that they were called out of the fields and taken to the side. These are mostly Mexican workers, and a lot of people say that they're all illegal. Well, let's not go into that, but there were Mexican workers, and they were working in the fields, and the fields, whatever the crop was, had to be dusted, as they say, and I'm sure that everybody has seen those light aircraft, usually biplanes, and they would dust the fields in an insecticide that would aid, that would certainly repel the bugs and supposedly lead to a healthy crop. But the thing was that as soon as it had been dusted, the workers who had little choice would be back into the fields, and you can imagine what that must have been like for those people. And I think probably it may still be happening. So lots of stuff to be aware of. The Grapes of Wrath I would recommend to anybody who wanted to know why, one of the reasons why Route 66 was so famous. Remember the song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66? Well, the people that rode Route 66 that were farmers and heading out to a brutal existence in many cases on Route 66 out to California, they were not getting their kicks. Now, just something that I happened upon on the net, and that was some chap that was talking, and he was talking about how one particular book had changed his life. Now, these books, The Grapes of Wrath and East of Eden, changed my life, as did Catch-22, because they were written with such passion, and whenever something has been written with such passion, it can have either a turn-off effect or it can actually change your life. And there's a book here that I've picked up a title of, which somebody out there might have read this book, but it's about banking. Now, along with some of the big religions, which I think of as big business, sorry, I'm a bit jaded on organized religions, I admit. I don't see organized religion as being present at the little church that I go to, and I pick up kids on a weekend and get them to church, and usually they play in and out. Some are attentive, others are not, but it means that they get together, and I feel that that's like it makes the little chapel that we attend, Beth and I, that Beth's family have been involved in running. You all probably know Pastor Timio and his wife and his family, lovely May and her sister and her brothers all play, sing, pray in that church, and so they're actually impacting the lives of people in a very direct way. So it makes that little chapel a resource, and other stuff is held there. Some of our giveaways are held there. Beth teaches Sunday school there. So back to the book that I'm trying to get to, that I always go off on a tangent. The banking system is something that has enslaved, in my opinion, and I'm simply giving my opinion. I'm not giving it as fact. I'm giving it as something that you might want to look at, and that is the fractional banking system, which actually reduces the money that is made. For one thing, the government doesn't make the money in the US. You may or may not know that the Federal Reserve apparently is a private company, and they print the money, and when they print the money there's interest to be paid. So even before you get the dollar in your pocket, you're already paying a debt on it. So the fractional banking system is something that is where a bank can lend money on your signature. So when you go in and say borrow $5,000, you borrow $5,000, well you sign for that. I've said this before, that when I got my house in Fort Myers, I bought my house. It was a struggle to get into that house and a struggle to pay for it, and eventually I lost it anyway when everybody's house was being taken, and mine was no different. So that all conspired together to make that a very rough time. But one of the key things that I remember was that as soon as I got into the house, I received a check for $8,000. Now, $8,000 was a lot of money to me. Now, what was the temptation? The temptation was to do exactly as it said. And the instruction was, all that you have to do is sign. You sign the check, endorse the check, and put it into your account, and $8,000 is yours. And then they'll send you their statement, and then you have the old carrot and the donkey, where they'll offer you, well, all you have to do is pay the minimum amount. And I don't know whether you've ever looked at the math on the minimum amount, but if you pay the minimum amount on a $5,000 loan, it will be astronomical by the time you paid it off, and it will take years of doing it. But what happens with your signature, and this is the interesting thing, is that with your signature then becomes a product that allows the bank to sell their service. Now, you can correct me on this, because I'm not going to say that I'm absolutely totally correct on figures. I'm a little dyslexic when it comes to numbers, and I think it's possible, because I certainly am. But when you put your signature, so my signature on the back of that check allows the bank to lend 8 times, I believe this is correct, 8 times the amount that I borrowed. And it doesn't have to be supported by gold, which is what it always used to be. But the Federal Reserve have got in, and that has gone down the tubes. So the bank is able to use your signature and lend out that much more money. So you've sold your signature for the use of $8,000 in my case. Anyway, why am I saying this? Because the man on YouTube, whose name I've also forgotten again, he was trying to educate people about the central banking system, which, if I call some of the organized religions big business, the banking system I think of as organized crime. And if you've ever been caught up in a credit card which goes over the limit and late in the payment, boy, you will know what organized crime is. Because if you say have borrowed $100 and you're late with a payment, now a lot of people, if they're in a difficult position, will be paying right on the dot, and if that dot gets moved, then they're late. And if they've run their card up to the whole $100, then now they're at great risk. And do the bank hate you for that? No, they love you. They love you. They love to see you bleeding. They love to see you lying there, hardly able to recover because of the debt that you're now in. So think very carefully about having a credit card. Why do you think that they all conspire together to make it so that you can't, or now they've been forced to accept an ATM card, right? Because it means that the money is there. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to use it. So at one time it used to be that you couldn't rent a car if you didn't have a credit card. So you may not want a credit card, but occasionally it's necessary to rent a car. So what the heck? You're caught between a rock and a hard place. Now, this man was talking about educating people on the banking system, which I would love to know more about the banking system and how it works. Now, the thing about something getting out of control, which is a credit card, here's what can happen. And this was a true experience that I had. I was at I think it was the dentist, or so. I was at some thing where I would be in waiting, and I was waiting, and a young lady was sitting next to me, and she looked out at my truck, and just out of curiosity she said, "Is that your truck, sir?" And I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "Just make sure that you don't go over and get a parking ticket." So we got into conversation, and she told me her car had been towed away. Now, this is a young girl who probably had a modestly costed car, nothing fancy, right? But she owned it. Now, the car was not worth a great deal of money, but it was all that she had. So the car was taken on, I think, a Thursday, she explained. That she got back to the parking space, and there was the car gone. She found out that it was at a parking removal service. They come round and they tow your car away and they put it in a waiting compound. Now, the earliest that she could get there, she didn't get paid until Friday, so the next day was not possible for her to get there because it was closed by then. She went back on Saturday and it was closed at the weekend. Now, can you see what's happening here? She owed a Friday storage, she owed Saturday storage, she owed Sunday storage, and when she got there on Monday, the fees were so high that she didn't have the money, so she owed Monday storage, and then she had to scratch around and try to find the money she owed Tuesday and Wednesday, and by Thursday, a week later, she could no longer afford to get her car, and her car was confiscated. And as my friend Elcio and I often used to go to auctions in LA, and we would go to an auction in LA, and there would be her car, I'm sure. If it wasn't her car, it was somebody else's. And the cars that they could not afford to get out of hock. See, what they have is, you don't just have the storage, you've got the towaway, I think you've got a towaway fee, and the parking ticket. So you've got the parking ticket, which if it's not paid by the date, is rapidly mounting up. And obviously you've got a potential court case then as well. So they'll chase you down for that money, of course. Now the other, they don't chase you down for the money for the car because they'll sell it. And I'm not sure who pays the piper, but when the piper is paid, whatever is left over, I'm sure, is profit. So that's a little bit how a credit card works. You know, you go in, you agree to take $100, you run it up, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then finally you get it to where it's $90. And then you get your minimum payment of, let's go with my math, which is clumsy at the beast. Let's say that your minimum payment is $15. So you may be late on that payment. So now you owe the $15, and that's taken you over your limit. So now you have an over the limit fee, and just to get it back to under the $100 limit costs you a lot of money, and that's in fines and fees. So think about that. Now, the man recommended a book which he says changed his life, and I'll give you the title of that book, but I don't have the author. And it is about the central banking system and how it's making slaves of us all. This is called The Creature from Jekyll Island. I'll give you that again, The Creature from Jekyll Island. That's as in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Jekyll Island. The Creature from Jekyll Island. And apparently it explains just how insidious the banking system is, and how it's not there to help us. So that's my wandering, meandering for this evening. Thank you for being with me, if you have managed to stay, and I hope you found some of it interesting. There's 3 books that you could go out and buy. The ones by John Steinbeck. I'll give you a tip. Anything by John Steinbeck is a wonderful book. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Pass that one around about The Creature from Jekyll Island. And if you have one, and you have an old battered copy that you would like to send to me, boy, I would be very happy to get it. Bye for now.